Let me start from the beginning, okay? The meaning of the word shalom, peace, in truth, at least from a worldly perspective, has to assume war, or at least divisiveness, politics, separations. Because if there's only one, there's no shalom. Not there's no shalom because he's not getting along with himself, but because the whole issue of shalom is that there is a possibility for conflict. There is a possibility for diversity, for divergence, of people not agreeing, not going in the same direction. And yet, for whatever reason, and through whatever influence, shalom is achieved. That's the philosophical concept of shalom. Peace means there could be conflict, and somehow the conflict is remedied, and remedied in a way which Torah calls shalom. So on a very, very physical level, shalom means the end of a war. But shalom means a unique type of ending of a war. It means the ending of a war that the war is never coming back again. In the language of the Gemara that everybody knows, Gam oivav yashlim imei, that the enemy becomes your friend. When two nations fight, they have a belief that they could win. That's why they fight. And they arm themselves with weapons and with personnel and with strategy, and they try their best to defeat their enemies. And the presumption is, if they fight, certainly if they fight for any length of time, there's a certain measure of parity. They're sort of equal. One is going to win and the other one is going to lose, but they're not that different. And therefore, when the war is over, it's never really over. Right? Some of the dirtiest words in any language is the word ceasefire. Because the word ceasefire doesn't mean stopping a war. It means taking a break so that you can rearm and fight again. When two nations fight and they're equally matched, the war never finishes. They just fight and fight and fight and fight and fight and fight. Unless, to give you a European example, you're the Swiss, right? Switzerland decided after hundreds of years of wars, no more wars. We're being neutral. The history of Europe, for those who are not aware, is replete with war. I mean, Europe had the wonderful continent of Europe, which is the greatest source of peace and love and kindness and generosity in the world, fought a 100 years war, a 100 years war, a 30 years war, a 7 years war. How do you fight war for 100 years? You don't have soldiers. And of course the answer is, you don't fight for 100 years, you just keep on fighting, and then you stop and you start and you stop and you stop. It never finishes. In all of Europe, one country decided that they're going to be neutral, and they remained neutral through World War I and World War II, but that's another story, because they were sick and tired of fighting. And the rest of Europe just kept on killing each other. War after war after war after war. And the reason is because the war's never finished. Because if two sides fight, and they're more or less evenly matched, the winner is not a winner and the loser is not a loser. It's just a break in the action. They wait a little bit, they rearm, and one of the things that happens sociologically is that they forget the terrible cost of war, like people die and another generation who's chomping at the bit to have fun, and they do it again. They do it again, they do it again, forever. In order to have Pada B'Shalom, one side comes up with a weapon that is so transcendent, that is so beyond the level of the playing field, that the opponent curses the day that they started up with them. And then when the war is over, it's over. And of course, the best example for that, I got into trouble for saying this once because some Muslims found it and they began to use it as proof that Jews wanted to use nuclear weapons against the Iranians. But I was saying it as a mashal for Pada B'Shalom, the atomic bomb. When we dropped the atomic bomb on Japan, we didn't just defeat Japan. We made Japan curse the day they started up with us. Now, of course, at that time, and I don't want to go into the whole politics of it, America treated Japan very correctly. We didn't only win the war, as they say, we won the peace, because we sent MacArthur, and he made friends with the emperor. It was handled very well, and that's why it was a peaceable end. But when the Japanese were defeated in the Second World War, they wanted no part of fighting with us. That's how you win, B'Shalom. And for those who do not know, the President of the United States at that time, FDR, said to Eisenhower, who was the Supreme Commander of the Allied Forces, we have to win good. defeat the Germans in such a way that they understand that they lost. Because at the end of the First World War, there was this whole idea of being stabbed in the back, which set up the Second World War. In other words, the First World War was not finished b'shalom. It was ended. There was a ceasefire. There was an armistice, and there was a peace treaty, and a bunch of other stuff. But the war was not over people's minds and hearts. So it came, the next generation, they forgot the cost of war. They fought and killed again. The Second World War, we won in the kind of way that the enemy said, we don't want to fight, we want to be a friend. That's the physical definition of Pada B'Shalom. Physical definition of Shalom is you defeat your enemy so resoundingly, so finally, that he want literally, like the expression that my mother bring, Gam, it's a pasuk, Gam oivav yashlamime. Your friend becomes your enemy. Your friend becomes your enemy. Why? He had a change of heart. Because you explained it to him. And you explained it to him not with a Achei Temimim, you explained it to him with a weapon. And he understands, as a lion, that it's not worthwhile, so it's over. That's the real shot of all the sugyas of Pada B'Shalom, that there's a war, and when it's finished, it's not finished for a day or two or a week or a month, it's finished because there's no enemy. And the only reason there's no enemy is because the enemy wants to be your friend. That's the practical taich of Pada B'Shalom Nashim Mikrovli. And when you talk about David HaMelech, Pada B'Shalom was said in his battle with Avshalom, right? Kapitel and Hey and Tillim. David HaMelech lived 70 years and spent his entire life fighting wars. The battle with Avshalom was the very end of his life. He was 67 years old. He was too old to even go fight. Yoav ben Tzruya fought for him. And then David HaMelech finally said, Pada B'Shalom, this battle I won in the kind of way that my enemy wants to be my friends. Like the various different details that we have to it. The Anshe Avshalom is Spalo, the Shleim Shel David. Avshalom's soldiers were trying to defeat David's army, but hoping not to hurt David HaMelech personally. And when David HaMelech says Pada B'Shalom, that's exactly what he means. This war, I'm never going to have to fight again. I fought many wars. But many of the wars that I fought, they're still there. There's a ceasefire. This war is finished. And that's the simple pshat. It's so ironic, right? A person fights a war. People die in war. And you're seeing Pada B'Shalom. It doesn't make any sense. But this is the pshat. Pada B'Shalom means the victory is peaceable. It means there's never going to be, these two nations are never going to fight again. That's the push of the pshat in Pada B'Shalom Nafshim Mikra of the Rabbi Yomad. And of course, as it relates to right now, the situation in Eretz Yisrael, which of course we're all faced, all of us think about Eretz Yisrael every minute of every day and night. And the Rebbe spoke so much about Eretz Yisrael. And what he said basically about Eretz Yisrael is the need to be strong. The Rebbe said that if Eretz Yisrael is going to be kind, it's going to be viewed as weakness. And weakness is an invitation to continue to fight. In other words, a ceasefire basically means the continuation of hostilities, not the cessation of hostilities. It's simply mechus zman. And the Rebbe said that many times, we all know this, the Rebbe said, I know only one way to peace, and that's strength. It's not because you want to kill people, because then they understand. They understand that this leintzach nicht. It's just not worthwhile. And if it's not worthwhile, then they don't do it. It's not so complicated. And if it's absolutely decisive, if you win so resoundingly, it's not only they don't want to fight anymore, they literally want to be your friend. You know, I am not a big maven in Israeli politics. And I Baruch Hashem have enough negative people to tell me how terrible the war is going on in Eretz Yisrael. But this is an opportunity. Eretz Yisrael can finish. The only way to finish is to end it. You can't make no compromise. You have to finish it. You have to finish it. They have to know that it was a bad idea to fight with Eretz Yisrael. And they have to, at least on some level, not say, but believe that the best thing they can do for themselves is make peace with Eretz Yisrael. Then you'll have shalom. But you have to explain it. And you can't explain it with a peace treaty. You explain it with a sword, because that's the lesson that has to be learned, unfortunately. And that's the taich Pada B'Shalom. The taich of Pada B'Shalom means not that it was peaceful, but that it's over. And the Pada B'Shalom means that it's over finally. It's never coming back.